Cheryl here from the Rogers Revue. I wasn't able to watch this episode on Friday, so in order to avoid spoilers, I've taken a 24-hour break from the internet. But I've seen it! Episode 5 of HBO's The Last of Us, also called Endure and Survive, which, if you think about it, is kind of like the motto for the entire video game as well as this TV show. We'll dive deep into that. First, a quick recap of episode 4, where I'll be honest, we did not do a full review of it because it was the shortest episode of the series, and while it did ramp up on some of the tension and had some good points to it, I wasn't really sure exactly where they were going with it, and I had a feeling it would heavily tie into episode 5. So I had a wait and see approach. We get to spend some time with Ellie and Joel out in the wilderness where she gets to experience some things that she's never done before, such as camping and maybe attempting some coffee, which we adults all know keeps the world running. Unless you drink tea. Tea is an acceptable form of caffeine as well. Ellie also proceeds to break out one of the most essential items in a post-apocalypse. She tends to carry around with her this book of puns that makes me laugh, cracked me up so many times, as well as she got through to Joel. She got through the hard exterior of Joel using some of these, which must have been bittersweet for him because you can only imagine the joking relationship that he had with his daughter Sarah at the beginning series in episode 1, and see that Ellie is starting to break down some of the walls that Joel has between himself and the rest of the world. They end up on a road trip where Ellie uses a map. For those of you who are too young to remember the MapQuest directions and actually unfolding an entire map and taking a highlighter and trying to map out your route. Apparently they don't have cell phones anymore. There's no GPS, no satellites working, so we're back to an old school map. And Ellie is navigating them to where they need to go. They end up in Kansas City and they're kind of getting funneled in from these cars that are on the side of the road, start blocking the highway that they're on, and it's kind of funneling them into an area that personally I was on the edge of my seat. I thought they were going to get ambushed here because it just looked like something somebody deliberately placed in there so that you would take your car, you would get funneled in, and then you'd get arrested or shot or something. So I was 100% expecting them to get ambushed at this point in the show. They make the choice to abandon the main highway and try to go through town, where they realize that situation's been changed a little bit. They don't see FEDRA anywhere. Ellie's trying to navigate them and is not doing so well with the map and the directions. A guy comes out onto the street seeming to want and need some help and medical attention, but Joel, being the person that he is and knowing the survival that he has had to endure for this crazy 20-year period, he doesn't trust him. People start shooting at them. Joel starts shooting back. Joel ends up in a tough situation fighting for his life, and Ellie takes out the gun that she has hidden away from Joel and uses it to defend the two of them. She doesn't cause this person's death directly, but her actions do have grave consequences for him, and it's one of those first instances we see where she has had to really step up. In the aftermath, it's kind of revealed that, Ellie has had to do things to protect herself in the past that maybe were not so great. So when she had to step up right now and help make sure that Joel was able to survive, some experience with it, but not a lot. Joel also opened up a little bit saying, that he had done some things in the past that he wasn't necessarily proud of, but they realize that they're in a not so great situation. They don't know exactly what's going on because FEDRA isn't around. People are around, but as Joel had mentioned before, people turn into bad people because of the situation that they're in, so he doesn't trust them. They end up going to find an apartment to sleep in for the night and regroup in the morning to figure out what they need to do. Joel is woken up in the morning by Ellie frantically calling his name, and when he opens his eyes, realizes that she has a gun to her head, and we have one of the new characters that was mentioned by name but not formally introduced. And this takes us to episode 5, where we get to learn more about Henry and Sam, who Kathleen is, who appears to be the leader of the group now in charge of Kansas City and is trying to find both Henry and now Joel and Ellie because they did kill one of her people. So she wants to hunt them down and make them pay. If you're still with us through the review of The Last of Us, we appreciate it. We're trying to do something new with the channel this year, so please look down below, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Check us out at the Rogers Revue. You should see some more things coming your way, movie reviews, TV shows. We've got some fun interviews lined up and maybe a look back at some things that we did last year. Episode 5, Endure and Survive, does hit you right in the feels. The theme I kind of take away from this episode specifically is, what are you willing to do for family, for survival? Will you stoop to stealing? Will you go to the depths of lying? Will you kill other people? And how does this fit with Joel and Ellie's relationship? They aren't actual family, but they are starting to make those bonds, and will they continue to go down that path, or will there be something that happens that shatters their belief in each other? Joel and Ellie have just met. In reality, the timeline of this show, they have not been together too long, and yet their bond has grown significantly. Now, when one of the characters, Kathleen, who is played by the actress Melanie Lynskey, has this wonderful set of dialogue that she's directing at Henry, but I think very applicable to Joel and his situation with Ellie. Now, what she says is, well, kids die, Henry. They die all the time. Do you think that the whole world revolves around him? That he's worth everything? When she said this, I was like, whoa, like that is dark. And the way she delivers the line, you're just, this is not gonna end well. I mean, either this episode or the entire season, but it has implications on what she's saying, how she's saying it, and it just stuck with me. So who is Kathleen anyways? To do this, the series does a quick flashback to, I guess, a few days. It's only been a few days. FEDRA is somehow kicked out of Kansas City. There's cheering, there's fireworks or flares getting set off to form, but then underneath you realize that there is darkness in these people. You see people getting beaten up violently. You see dead bodies being piled up. In the background of one of the scenes, somebody is getting hoisted up to be hung. So while the people who live there are in celebration, there's also some very dark under, and it jumps into it right away. The show cuts to people, normal seeming people, ununiformed people, so theoretically not FEDRA, that are being held with guards in a jail cell of some kind. And Kathleen walks in. She seems somewhat nice, somewhat understanding, speaks with a soft voice, talks about the possibility of them getting trials and the consequences for their actions, implicates that, you know, they were collaborating with FEDRA to do things such as feed themselves, get medicine, or even just to get some luxuries, which in this case, we're talking about Apple. But she kind of implies that she is going to offer mercy to whoever speaks up and tells her the information that she is looking for. Specifically, information about Henry and where he is right now. She says in her sweet, syrupy voice, "I'm not FEDRA, lucky for you." But the question I have as the episode goes on is, how different is her group and the people involved with the resistance from FEDRA? You know, the ones that they have thrown in jail and that they are threatening. Whatever they've done during this FEDRA occupation of the city, they have done for their own survival. And for her, how different is she really? Because once she gets the information that she's looking for, instead of showing mercy, instead of giving them fair trials, what she ends up doing is, as she walks out of the jail area, she orders her people to execute them then and there. Henry is aware of this. He knows what Kathleen is like. So I was kind of on pins and needles. We learn later on that in his quest to help his brother survive, he had to do some bad things, kind of like a little bit to what Joel and Ellie alluded to in the previous episode. We don't know the full details, but we do know that in these situations, people have to make bad choices, bad decisions in order to survive, and it's something that they can end up regretting later. But he has a plan, we say. As a person who loves to play video games, whenever there's a mention of going down into the sewers or the underground or tunnels, it's not usually the best place to go. There's full of creatures hiding out in the dark and the plague and destruction and diseases. So I did not foresee this going well. I thought there was going to be all sorts of infected and it would be a huge disaster. But it turns out going down to the tunnels offers a little bit of a respite, a little bit of a light in the darkness, shall we say. This is a small tie-in to the video game, I've been told, where, there used to be an attempt of settlements underground to try and survive over the past 20 years of the infected and FEDRA control. We open the door, we see there's kids' drawings, there's toys, there's games. They get to play and be kids again, and it's a joy to see. But I took a look at the timestamp for the episode and realized we were over halfway through, and so I knew there's no way that this episode was going to end on these high notes, and that at some point we would be careening back into the darkness and things were going to turn around. Once they left that area, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But everything seemed to be going to plan. They emerged from the tunnels, which again, I did not think was going to go well. So they emerged out into kind of an abandoned part of the city with old and overgrown trees and cars, and there seems to be no one around at all whatsoever. But we realize as they're almost to the edge of the city, almost to their freedom, that there's a sniper up on a tall building, and he has them pinned down by the abandoned cars. Joel makes the executive and strategic decision to draw fire by kind of moving away from them, trying to sneak into the house and go corner the sniper. Turns out that it is an old man up there. Joel tries to reason with him, tries to get him to end things peacefully, but that doesn't happen. And seems like the old man did not have the best of intentions at all. He was not just up there trying to survive, be left alone in peace. No, he used a walkie-talkie to let Kathleen know where they were. And so she shows up guns a-blazing with a bunch of cars, a bunch of armed men to get them back. She really wants Henry to pay for killing her brother. Well, not necessarily killing her brother, but his actions led to her brother being executed by FEDRA. Things seem to be going badly for Joel, Ellie, and Henry and Sam. They are surrounded by the resistance group. Everything is on fire. This is where we hear Kathleen give that quote. Kids, their survival, how important they are. What are you willing to do for them? And everything seems like it's going to be a shit show. And lo and behold, it gets worse. How does it get worse? A weird thing starts to happen where a truck in the background of one of the shots starts to move on its own, starts to tilt and then kind of tilt more and then slide into the ground, into some sort of sinkhole, and you just know this is something that's not good for anybody. Out of the hole rushes all these infected people right out from under the ground. We see the resistance group trying to shoot them down. Joel is desperately trying to make his shots count one at a time in order to provide Ellie cover. Henry and Sam get cornered under a truck and are trying to kick the infected away. A bloater ends up crawling its way out from the underground, and this is what turns the tide for Ellie, Joel, Sam, and Henry. Bloater kind of just starts picking off the people, the resistance. Kathleen ends up being taken down by some small childlike acrobatic creepy thing. It does allow them to escape, and they are able to go to hotel and regroup. Kids are supposed to be preparing for bed, going to sleep, and they end up having a conversation where Sam asks Ellie if she's ever scared. She says scared of being alone, and Sam asks about monsters being in him. And we realize that at that point he had gotten bitten, which, let's be honest here, with all that was happening, the fact that there were two kids on the ground, the fact that they didn't do a body check to say, is everyone okay? We need to check. That's kind of on. Somebody should have asked, have you gotten bitten? Because kids could not survive. Not an 8-year-old. Ellie decides to keep this knowledge to herself. She thinks she can help Sam out by rubbing some of her blood into his wound, given the fact that she believes her blood makes her invincible to the infection and she should be able to transfer it to him. This, unfortunately, does not work because that's not how blood transfusions or medical care, that's not how things work, right? But the next morning, it makes for a very unsafe situation where things happen, and I don't want to talk too much about it because you need to watch the episode if you haven't already and have watched it. I could not do it justice. The writing, the directing, the acting, and also props to the casting team. This episode especially. Henry was introduced, Sam was introduced, Kathleen was given a bit more screen time, and these other side characters that were there for brief amounts of time. How the actors carried through with their parts, everything just went really, really well. The creators for the show knew what they wanted as characters, as actors, and the casting team found ideal candidates. Through interviews, we know that they found Keivonn Woodard is a deaf actor, and so when he was on set, he had sign language, they had interpreters, all of the cast did what they could to learn sign language and communicate with him. Lamar Johnson did a fabulous job. Got Jeffrey Pierce as Perry. Talk about costumes. The bloater effect, all the zombies. It was an episode that is going to stick in people's minds for a while. Again, if you're still with us, you stuck with us throughout this entire review, we appreciate it. We would also appreciate you going down and hitting the subscribe button down below. Hit the bell. Also, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the website, all the things. We'll see you next time. Bye.